There are two kinds of people in this world. The people who fail to do what they know they should, and those who keep doing things they know they shouldn't. Guess what? You're both. Hi, I'm your host, life and business coach, Marcy Barker, aka your loving kick in the pants. In this podcast, I'll teach you the 6 steps of my accountability code that will help you wake up with clarity and show up with aligned action steps that make follow through easy and peaceful. All right, let's jump in. Hello, my beautiful people. Welcome to Your Loving Kick in the Pants. I'm here with one of my best, I was going to say oldest clients. You're not old, but I've known you the longest. This person has known me since I was born, and I am here with my sister, Holly Mckeeth. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your stage of life.
So my stage of life right now, I'll start with that because that's easy. I've been married for 20 years. Me and my husband get along really well. We feel like we're a good match that we make each other really happy. We have 2 kids that are in their older teen years and are exploring new phases of their life. I currently work 2 jobs, one as an admin and doing event planning, and another one working in a microbiology department for a lab. And I'm going to school and just kind of exploring of what my options are and what I want to do.
Holly's the perfect mix between brains and creativity.
Yeah, so, I like to say that one works my head and one works my heart.
Oh,
so I get a good
that's
balance.
Clever. I like that. In the accountability code, when I was writing my book, Holly was one of the first people to read it and to listen to it because I put a lot of my heart and soul into it, but also some pretty big things that maybe other people wouldn't share about their family. So what did you think when you first heard about how I called out our toxic dad's behavior?
Okay. Well, listening to the book was super fun because sometimes in my life I don't have a ton of time, but I love spending time with you. I'm a quality time person. So listening to the book on my commutes was really just like hanging out with a friend. And you were one of the first siblings that I shared a lot of my experiences with. And so it was really just like talking with a friend. So I felt like we were connecting as I was listening to your story. When you did that video of calling out our dad in our Facebook family group.
Let me give a little bit of background.
Okay.
So in my book and my workbook, I talk about how I was so fed up with my dad's behavior, and it was a breaking point for me that I was like, I can't deal with this anymore. And before that happened, Holly had talked about some of her problems that she had, and she used the word abuse. And we were at the gym, and I was like, abuse? Like, that's a big word, Holly, and I just kept thinking like our childhood wasn't that bad. And as I kept learning and growing, I realized that that was the exact word to describe some of the experiences we had growing up. And as a life coach, I had to recognize that I had to go through these things to really understand how to help other people with it. So listeners, Holly is like the wisdom that helped me become a better person. No tears. We'll edit those out. Okay. We already had a whole crying session. We'll just say that. But I needed somebody to understand how I was feeling, and I didn't recognize her level of hurt yet. So, yeah.
So I think I felt safe sharing with you because I had gotten to a point in my life that I knew that I needed to share. I knew that things weren't sitting well with me of childhood experiences, and I had always taken on the role of being a protector. So if I was quiet, I wouldn't change the view of our dad or our mom against anybody because then that would be my fault that I was like putting that on someone else. But I started going to therapy and realized that these things weren't normal and that our stories, it was always like, oh, my dad's crazy. But like they provided really great stories, but I could always see in people's eyes when it was a shift that it was too much for them to hear.
Or their jaw would drop.
They're like, that's not normal, right? And I'm like, no, your dad's not like that.
Yeah.
So going through that process and realizing the accountability I had to break generational trauma, that no one else was going to do that for me. In fact, my first therapy session, I sat down And I laid out like, I want to work on this. I want to work on this. I want to work on this. And my therapist was like, yes, I love this. Let's get into it. And I was like, and I want to fix this for my family. And he's like, can't do that. And I was like, okay, well, if I can't fix it for my family, can I fix it for me? And he was like, absolutely. So we started there. And I realized how it was important for me to share my story because I wasn't actually protecting anybody by being quiet. I was really just enabling the behavior and not helping people realize the things that I went through that they maybe could have avoided. And I think that that's where we're at now, is by me sharing my story, starting with my siblings. It actually started with you because I saw that you were doing the work and, or at least you gave me the space and the time to listen, and you didn't immediately attack me when I said, this is abuse. I mean, we were able to have an open conversation of you were like, that's a really big word. And I'm like, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
Like, this is what it is. So.
And for reference, Holly is the oldest of 8 children, and I'm number 6. So even though our mom had us 11 years from oldest to youngest, we kind of had different parents, but we know birth order makes a big difference. And the way they treated Holly was not the same as they treated me, but there were still incidences where we were like, really? Like, this isn't normal. And I'm not going to spoil all of it. You guys are going to have to get the free audiobook and get the workbook. But I didn't know how important, Holly, you were to me being able to speak up. In my workbook, I share about how I made a video in our private Facebook group for our family.
Yes.
And I made the video and I just called out my dad. And I was like, you've done this, this, and this in a very tactful way, unemotional, just very fact-telling. And I won't spoil it, but it was so good to hear so many of our siblings say, good job. Good for you for speaking up. And it's been really interesting to know, just like you had said, like, we can't fix anybody else in our family, but there is definitely a deeper connection that we have because we understand the importance of you are accountable for you and only you. So during this very long span of, it's still not over.
No,
like we're still,
no.
Still working through things and all that. But what would you say was a defining wake up and show up moment for you recently?
I think when I realized that I did have the power to keep myself safe and keep my family safe by creating boundaries, and that those were put in place for me and not as a punishment for someone else or to try and change someone else. I felt like that was really a point of like, dang, I am powerful. And it feels good to have that power instead of being a victim of someone else's actions, of someone else's ideas, of someone else's plan for me. And so, yeah, it's been really empowering just to realize that the boundaries are really for keeping me safe and keeping my family safe instead of trying to control
and isn't
other
it
people.
Funny, like when you respect somebody, you can be around them, It's like if I adhere to a mutual relationship, things are going to be great. And we get to build a relationship and grow together. And some people just don't understand that at all. Hey, listeners, the message of waking up and showing up is yours for the taking. In fact, it's free. I've recorded my entire audiobook and I'd love for you to consume it between episodes. Head to marcybarker.com to get instant access to the accountability code Wake Up and Show Up. All right, let's jump back in. When you are moving forward, what would you say your next loving kick in the pants might be? Like, what's something that you've had promptings to address, or maybe something a little scary that you want to take action on?
So I've always had a struggle of being like multi-passionate of, I like want to do this. I want to do that. and they never align. They're never like, oh, here's a cute little package that they all fit into. So I think for a long time I thought that like I was just broken because I didn't have a specific passion, or I didn't know my specific purpose.
That one thing.
That one thing. You. Yeah. And even like having lots of siblings, I'm like, oh, this sister is photography. This sister is fitness, this sister is quilting, this brother is DJ. You know, like everybody had their certain things, and I was like, I don't know what that is for me. But I think the next defining moment is that I can integrate all of those different parts of myself. They don't have to be wrapped up in a small or big box together. But I can have different stages of life, and I can do all the things I want to do, and they don't have to make sense to anybody else.
Yes. I love that. There is a story in my book called Born With It. What would you say is one of those things that you were born with that brings you peace as you develop?
I think that I have the ability to hold space for people and also be a good listener and kind of assess what's going on, that I can step back, hold that space. And I almost say it's like a little bit of like emotional triage, that I can hold that without
Diagnosing.
diagnosing, like, and I
In
think that that's something that I learned was a strength for me, that I thought was born out of trauma, you know, that I had to be ready for whatever would happen, whatever experiences. I felt like I had to manage other people. But I think through understanding my power, I've been able to develop radical acceptance for other people and where they're at, and use that to help them if that's what they want. If that's not what they want, that's okay too. But I think that's been something that I've learned about myself that has been really eye-opening.
it's very evident in our family for sure. And you can never go wrong by being a safe place for people, knowing that the door is always open if people are ready to approach it with love and humility and growth and understanding.
Right.
So when people go to read the workbook or read the specific story about how we called our dad out, what is something that you would like people to remember as they are dealing with toxic or abusive people or behaviors in their life?
I think that it's important to work on yourself. I think that that's going to make the biggest impact in anybody that you interact with, anybody that you meet, because when you are okay or still or whole or understanding, you can emanate that or give that to someone who maybe doesn't have that yet. And so you can encourage them, and you can kind of adapt to what their needs are without bottling up that, or without taking it on. You can be more of a conduit for other people instead of a jar of bottling.
So much wisdom. This is why I'm so glad. You know, we can't really ever say who favorites are. My kids are always like, Mom, who's your favorite sibling? And I'm like, it changes. It depends on the day. It depends on who I want to hang out with. Yeah. And if you ever see my hair braided in a photo, it's Holly. She's always done it for me. Beauty school dropout, who is like my personal assistant when it comes to, I really just don't want to do my hair for days on end. And
yeah, understandable.
Yeah, you're the best. Fun. Is there anything you would like to leave with our listeners when it comes to receiving a loving kick in the pants and staying accountable to what matters?
What I want everybody to remember is that you have more capacity and more strength and more power than you're giving yourself credit for. I think if we just practice, try it out, experiment. I really love experiments to say like, oh, well, what will happen if I work out for 30 days straight? Or what happens if I drink this much water? Or like, what happens if I don't go to this family event because it's not healthy for me? And then assess what works for you and what doesn't, because everybody's going to have suggestions for you. Everybody's going to have advice. But if you take the time to learn yourself and learn what feels right to you and different things that you have the power to do, like really we're so much more capable than other people give us credit for, and that we give ourselves credit for. So I say try it out and see what happens.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Accountability is all about taking action, and really you never know what the outcome will be until you do it. So I appreciate you. Thanks for being such a I don't know, a bucket of wisdom. Those aren't cool words, but I love you. And I am so grateful to have you in my life to be that safe place, but also to help me be a better person.
Thanks. I love you too.
Love you. Hey friends, I want to thank you for listening to this episode of Your Loving Kick in the Pants. If you got any value out of this episode, I would love for you to drop me a review or share with a friend what you learned. All right, I'll see you next Wednesday for your loving kick in the pants.